Johnny Tremaine, Chapter 9, Section 2. Even in the old days of the Lapham shop, Dove would have been Johnny's friend if Johnny would have had it. The enmity, or fight, the hatred between them, was the younger, the smarter boy's fault. As soon as Johnny began to cultivate Dove, he was surprised at the response. Dove had always been lonely, and he still was. The Yankee boys threw bad words and oyster shells at him because he worked for the British. The British horse boys badgered him, they picked on him. Lieutenant Stranger thought he was the stupidest, laziest pig he had ever met, and told him so at least once a day. Colonel Smith was not above knocking him down if his horses were ill cared for. But Johnny's feelings toward Dove had changed. Dove was garrulous, indolent, complaining, and boastful. But it hurt Johnny when the other boys bullied him, and his masters beat him. He was like a man who owns a dull, mean dog. He may punish it himself, but resents it if anyone else punishes it. For better or worse, Dove was now his own private property. Now maybe you've experienced something like this, where you might be a little bit mean to something or someone, but if someone else is mean to it, you're on them. Maybe a little brother or a little cousin or younger sibling or someone where you might be mean to them a little bit, but if somebody else starts picking on them, you're going to get them. Well, anyway, that's how Johnny feels about Dove. Once a day, twice a day, and sometimes 3 times in one day, Dove would sneak over to the observer's office. Here, for a few minutes, he could get away from the swearing and cuffing or hitting of his superiors and the malice or hatred of the grooms. By Rab and Johnny's standards, they were often rude to him. By his own, they treated him fine. At least he was allowed to slump into a chair, complain, boast, and eat. It was hard to watch Dove swilling their limited food, but the way to his heart seemed to be through his stomach. What they had, they shared with him. Although badly treated by the British, and kindly by the 2 Yankee boys, Dove had become violently pro-British, at least when talking to Rab and Johnny. He considered himself part of the British Army and was always bragging about what we were going to do to rebels. Yep, we're going to march right out of here, he was saying one day, and we'll kill every rebel we meet, skin them, cut off their heads. And here in Boston, just as soon as old Gage gives the signal, we're going to string up every rebel, hundreds of them. Yep. Johnny yawned. He could not help it. The yawn may have irritated his guest. Oh, they know all about you. You haven't been given any riding to do for them of late, have you? True enough, although Johnny had not found out one thing of genuine value by the letter carrying he had done for British officers, it had been a good contact and he needed money. He had been sorry to find that he was no longer employed. It was I that warned him. I told him that Johnny Tremaine was a rebel of the deepest double dye. So Dove had gone out of his way, had he, to be mean? Oh, you. Blat, blat, blat. Talk, talk, talk. I know what's my duty to report and what's my duty to keep mum about. Take military secrets. I don't tell him. Now, before we move on, let's take a minute and do a quick write. This is Dove acting against Johnny by warning the British not to trust him. The last time Dove worked against Johnny, he gave Johnny a cracked crucible full of molten silver. So take a couple minutes and explain how this is alike and unlike the last time that Johnny worked and Dove and Johnny worked against each other. Go ahead and pause the video for that. As soon as he had arrived, he had walked over to the cupboard where the boys kept their food and helped himself. As he talked, the crumbs came dribbling out of the corner of his loose mouth. For instance, he went on, you didn't know, did you, that last December, Lieutenant Stranger almost went on an expedition to Portsmouth? I knew he was planning to go, but I knew enough not to say anything to you about it. I can keep a secret all right. Thanks to Lydia, they had known all about this, but they had had no idea that Dove, too, had known at the time. That's no secret now, but it is a secret where old Gage will strike next. You'd like to know, wouldn't you? I could tell you, if I had the mind to. Hey, why don't you give me something to drink? Rab and Johnny exchanged a glance. Johnny poured him a tankard or a big cup of ale. That's a kind of beer. Maybe he knew more than they thought. But would the mild ale loosen his tongue? Before we move on, I want to draw your attention to an allusion or a subtle reference that the author's making with the term loose lips. She does it twice. She talks about how Dove has crumbs dribbling out of the corner of his loose mouth, and also about loosening his tongue. So this is an intentional choice on the author's part to allude or refer to the old poster, "Loose lips sink ships," which is a caution to people not to share military secrets with the wrong people. So as she's writing, right, the crumbs came dribbling out of the corner of his loose mouth to show that Dove is a slob, she's also indicating that he has some secrets to spill. Shall we find out what they are? "You wait a moment, Dove. I'll be right back." Johnny ran through the backyard to the Afric Queen. He knew Colonel Smith had told Lydia that one of his young gentlemen was prone to solitary tippling, meaning he would drink. That's what tippling is. Tippling is having an alcoholic beverage. Solitary, alone. He would drink all by himself. If ever she found a bottle of brandy, a kind of liquor, in his chamber, she was to take it. He did not say where she was to take it to. Lydia took away the young gentleman's bottle in the morning when she made his bed, but was not above reselling it to him in the evening. Johnny came back, a brandy bottle in his hand. "Now this," he promised, "will pick up that flat ale something fine." He poured in so generous an amount that Dove's white lashes quivered with anticipation. "Oh, you certainly are a good guy. My, that's great. That's the stuff. Well, as I was saying, here it is March. That's spring. Armies don't stay cooped up in springtime. They march out and fight." He hiccuped for the first time. "Fight battles. And the battles we are going to fight the springtime. Me and the rest of the boys. Well, I warn you, if I was you, I'd not wait. I'd start running and not stop until I came to the Berkshires." "I don't believe they'll move the army all the way out to the Berkshires." "Who said anything about the army going to the Berkshires? There are no military stores there, and King's commanded old Grandma Gage to confiscate all rebel stores. His Majesty is real mad, got his royal dander up. He thinks Gage is scared because he don't take action against the rebellion." "Gage already has tried 3 times to seize our supplies. Charleston, Salem, and Portsmouth. Once he did, and twice we were too quick for him. He doesn't know where our things are hidden." "Don't he? Don't he?" Johnny filled his tankard, his big cup, again, with the horrifying concoction. Now, this is kind of gross. This is like he took liquor and poured it into beer. If you were to compare it to something that you might drink, it would be like pouring maybe like Kool-Aid or fruit punch into your soda. Like, ew. But it's got a higher alcohol content, and so Dove is into it because Dove's got troubles that he's trying to forget, and Johnny and Rab, well, they're trying to loosen his lips. Dove belched with satisfaction. "They've got maps in map cases. They've got Worcester and Concord marked in red." This word, I know, it looks like Worcester, maybe, or Worcester. It's Worcester. And Concord marked in red. "They know where to go, all right. Don't you wish you knew just how many active troops there are in Boston now?" "How many?" Dove's figure was wildly inaccurate. It looked as though they had wasted their ale and Lydia's brandy. Dove was getting maudlin. There were tears in his eyes as he told them how much he loved them. "Best friends I ever had," he mumbled. "Best boys in the world," and suddenly struck out at the British. "They're mean guys," he cried angrily. "I'm going to the Berkshires with you two. I'm not a-going to stay here at Boston nursemaiding them there horses. Dig a hole, get in hole, pull hole in after me. Keep safe till war's over. Boys, boys," he cried in alcoholic despair. "You come with me. I can't stand for you to hang. I can't." And he burst into tears. "Pull yourself together," Rab ordered sternly. He was less easygoing about some things than Johnny. "Sure, I'll pull right out of here." He got unsteadily to his feet. I'm going to tell that stranger I quit. Going to throw a curry comb at Colonel Swish's fash. I'm going to... Oh, no, hold on. No, you're not, Dove, said Rab, blocking the door. You're going to sit down, see, and cool off. It would never do to let Dove return to the inn in such a state. He'd get fired. The boys had overcooked their own goose. That's an idiom that means they had taken it just a little bit too far. It took them half an hour to quiet Dove. Over and over, they explained to him what a fine job he had and what a glory it was to be part of the British Army. Finally, Dove began to subside. He was getting sleepy. Well, it don't make any difference. I'll get fired anyhow. Stranger told me get the colonel's horses all shined up good. Told me get Nan around saddled by 4 assumption, maybe by 4:30. He leaned back and slept. Looks like I'll have to do his work for him, muttered Johnny. We can't let him get fired. It's 4 now. Oh, that swill pig, that louse! He ran for the stable. Before this, he had often helped Dove with his work. The colonel had 2 horses. The heavy yellow charger, or war horse, called Sandy, he had brought with him from England, and the light pacing mare Lieutenant Stranger had picked out for him after he had decided Goblin wouldn't suit. Nan, this second horse, had easier gaits. She had a more comfortable pace than the old war horse. The colonel much preferred her for hacking about or just riding about in Boston, but she was not yet well trained for drums and volleys or fire from weapons. The colonel, a poor horseman, not a very good rider, never risked his dignity on her when he went out with his troops. Then he rode Sandy. So this would be a great place for you to take a moment and jot that down on a Post-it. What does riding Sandy mean? What does riding Nan mean? What do these 2 different horses indicate? Remember when we talked about the different kind of vehicles that you would use for different purposes? Which one of these horses is the tank? Which one of these horses is the convertible? Nan was beautiful and affectionate. Sandy, sweet-tempered, old, and wise. Johnny liked them both. As Dove slept, Johnny worked and whistled. At 4:30, he had Nan saddled and led her to the mounting block in front of the inn. Now, before we move on, let's go ahead and make a prediction. Gage is riding Nan. So Colonel Gage ordered Dove to prepare the horse Nan to go for a ride. What sort of ride could he be going on? Is he preparing to go to battle? Why or why not? What do you think he's about to be doing? Go ahead and pause the video. Just make a quick prediction. Jot it down, and let's see if you're right. The fat colonel could not mount or dismount from the ground. Take her back, boy, Lieutenant Stranger told him. Colonel Smith is bilious. Bilious means he was kind of nauseous. He felt like he was going to puke. Then he noticed it was Johnny, not Dove, and his handsome face brightened. He asked no questions. Look now. Look you, he said. Run, fetch your horse, and I'll take Nan. I want to show you how to jump. Stranger had already told him of the hurdles at the foot of the common. Hurdles are barriers that a horse is going to jump over to show that it's, athletic. It's some kind of sport. Johnny had wistfully watched red-coated officers schooling their horses over them. He had not dared try them himself. He was afraid they would order him away. But no one would order away any friend Stranger cared to bring with him. Although the very young officer was proud and class-conscious enough when they met indoor at the Lights or Afric Queen, once both were in their saddles, they were equal. He was an ardent teacher who had last met a pupil worth bothering with. He's a really excited teacher who was excited to have a student who really wanted to learn. Or rather, 2 pupils. For at the end of the first lesson, he said Goblin was the finest natural jumper he had ever seen. Johnny knew he longed to own him himself. He could, any moment, by merely saying commandeer. And Johnny knew he never would say it. Now, we've talked about this before. Johnny and Lieutenant Stranger have this kind of respectful relationship where Stranger respects Johnny. And we see it echoed here again. Johnny knew he would never say it. That wouldn't be respectful. From that day, he and Johnny spent hours together jumping or exercising horses. Johnny almost worshipped him for his skill and almost loved him because ever and anon he looked so much like Rab. But still, it was only where horses were concerned they were equals. Indoors, he was rigidly a British officer and a gentleman, and Johnny an inferior, less than. This shifting about puzzled Johnny. It confused him. It did not seem to puzzle the British officer at all. Now again, let's make another quick write. Adopt an alignment here, right? Discuss or write about how the British soldiers treat the colonists. We've seen this question before. Why do they get along with them sometimes? Why does Johnny like many of them? Do you think this is realistic, this situation with Lieutenant Stranger? Take a couple minutes to answer that in your notes, and you can stop the video here as well.